Ron and I had dinner with our good friends John and Marcia and their 16-year-old son Jack. And normally in a situation like this, I'm the one who's, chatting away. Ron is just patiently listening. This time is a little bit different because he's the one who's chatting and I'm the one just listening. Now he knows why I am so, unusually quiet. And he's the one talking.
Well, of course I do, because John and Marcia are deaf and they use American Sign Language to communicate. I grew up using sign language as well.
And American Sign Language, which we call ISL, every country has their own language, but they also have their own sign language. So here in Ireland, you've got ISL, Irish Sign Language, but what you got here is who knows what happened over there. It's all okay. It's all okay. What you got here are two Americans. So we've got American Sign Language, which happens to be Ron's first language.
This is true because my parents were both deaf, and I, as a Coda, communicated in American Sign Language with them in the home.
Now, we are both Codas, that's C-O-D-A, that is Children of Deaf Adults. And Jack, the 16-year-old, he is also a Coda. He's a hearing child that was taught to sign by his deaf parents. But his experience and mine were completely different because my deaf parents not only did not teach their children to sign, they refused to let them sign. So, I'm watching Jack, signing and talking and signing so fluently with his parents, and that is not only surprising, but very moving to me.
And to me, this is very natural to communicate in American Sign Language. However, the difference is my parents did not verbally speak.
And I grew up watching my parents sign to each other, but my mother was adamant that her children not learn to sign so that we could belong just to the hearing world and not to her deaf world.
It's unusual to have a Coda not sign in the home.
And that is because my grandparents, my mother's parents, were really against my mother marrying my father. Okay, not only was he deaf, that was bad enough. But when my grandmother saw my father signing to my mother for the first time, she was totally horrified. And she warned my mother, and she said, "What kind of verkackte thing is that? Your children, they're going to go like this, with the fingers, and they're not going to talk, just like him." Okay, that was true. My father communicated mainly through sign language. But my mother spoke well, and she read lips. And when her children were born hearing, and the family threatened to take us away, because they did that back then, hearing children of deaf parents could be taken away. So she decided we were going to learn to lip read so that we could at least communicate with her. But sign language for us, that was out. Even if that meant she was going to have to be the interpreter between her children and their father.
And my experience was so different. I was close to my parents, and we communicated fluently. However, the difficulties I had was in school. I had a problem trying to connect written and spoken English with American Sign Language that I was doing at home.
And his teachers really were no help because they had no idea that English was really his second language.
This is true. I didn't even know I had a second language. I didn't know that ASL was a language. They did not know that I was doing that, because like my friend, my class was diversified. There was Carmen, who was Italian. He was speaking Italian in his home. They knew that. Bilardo was speaking Spanish in his home. But they had no idea that ASL is a language as well, and that I was speaking a different language at home, and they didn't address that.
And I don't think his mother, she couldn't help you with your homework.
No, and that's on the other side where my mom didn't know where to go to get help. She saw me struggling at home with homework. A lot of times I would have reading assignments, and there were words in there that I just didn't understand. I use the word enough as an example. Now again, here, their sign for enough might be different than what it is in America. ASL, the sign is this, enough, okay? So here I am, I'm reading along, and I see that word in the book, and I go, Mom, come here, word, what, that, she looks at it. Okay, that means it's complete, it's finished, good to go. That's what was in my head, right? So it wasn't until the next day when I would show my teacher in the book, what's this word? She would verbally say, enough. Well, now the light bulb went on, and I can connect English with American Sign Language. And again, as I said earlier, this is the situation, this is the problem I had throughout school.
So in the end, really, he is really self-taught.
Well, I never thought of it that way, but I guess I was, in the fact that reading was a struggle. And it took a while to be able to read fluently, even after high school. But Gloria, she didn't have that situation because her parents did not teach her how to sign.
That was because my mother was so afraid of losing us that she had to prove that she could be a good mother even though she was deaf. So instead of giving us the language, the sign language of her deaf world, what she gave us was the world of books and literature. She read to us constantly. She taught us how to read and write before we ever went to school. And the books that she read, I don't think she knew about children's books. It was Shakespeare, it was Tennyson, it was Longfellow, it was all the classics. And that was before kindergarten.
Wow. That was a wonderful gift your mother gave you.
Oh, yes, it was a wonderful gift. You know, I have always appreciated that, but that gift came with a price because of her choice not to give us a common language so that we could communicate either with her or with my father. Okay, as I said before, she did teach us to lip read, so we could sort of communicate with her, but my father was a very poor lip reader. And as we know, lip reading, it's not a great way to communicate. So I'm having this long conversation with my mother, and you got to understand, when you talk to a deaf person, they are reading your lips, so they are staring right here. You are looking at them. You can't go like this, you can't go like that, you can't run to your room. You got to stay right there because you are looking at each other. So we're talking and talking and talking, and eventually it goes on, and on, and I can see, I'm watching her face, and I'm seeing this. Okay, stop the conversation. Mom, do you know what I said? Yes. Great. Wonderful. What did I say? I don't know. Right?
Well, yes, that's because lip reading is hit or miss. It's not accurate at all. My parents, they knew that. They didn't try. My dad, like your dad, he never did. He had a cigar in his mouth anyway, and he's not going to be going to do it. He's not going to do that, My mom, she was up for the challenge sometimes where she would like to see if she could catch a word here or there. And one time we were coming home from the grocery store, and I had 2 bags of groceries, full of groceries, right? Now, do I put them down? I got the keys in the pocket. I forgot, I had the keys. So I thought, could I put the groceries down, get the keys out? And no, I think I want to try some lip reading. I think this might work. One word, just see association with the door. So I thought to my mom, to get the keys, right? Mom, keys. She looks at me. What? Keys. Then she finger spells P-E-A-S. Peas? No, not peas. Peas in the bag. No, not peas. Keys. Well, what for peas? No, keys. So I had to put the groceries down. I brought out my keys from my pocket. I showed her, and she goes, oh, keys. So as you can see, even with one word, lip reading can be a disaster.
Yes, it can. And it can have, it can have consequences too, because, we could not, there were things that happened to me, and I'm sure that happened to my brother, that my father should have been aware of, but we couldn't talk to him. And even though we loved him very much, we did try to talk to him, but because he didn't read lips, and we couldn't sign, there was really no way for us to communicate. And later on in life, my brother said to me, of an older friend of his, he's a father I never had. And I did that as well. So we both had mentors and advocates just outside the family.
That's true. And now that you mention it, I had an advocate outside the home too, outside the house. And he was our neighbor. He was two houses down. His name was Danny. And I talked to him a lot. And I shared with him one time where, I think it was around the 5th grade, there were 3 levels in the 5th grade. There was the 3rd level that I was in, and then these, okay. Yeah, I'm not going to get into that one, but that's this level. Then there was the intermediate level that I thought I could do pretty good in, you know. And to be honest, that's where my friends were. And then there was the brainiacs, you know, the smart kids here, you know. I drowned in this class, but I thought I could do okay here. Well, Danny went to bat for me. I mean, he went to my school, talked to the teachers and the principal, and to my surprise, he did get me into the intermediate level. And I was so appreciative of that, and so were my parents, because they didn't know how to help me.
Yes, and I had an advocate as well. He was my acting coach. His name was Peter Flint. And he was the one who encouraged me to write my show and just tell my own story. You know, what I think this always comes down to is the importance of a common language so that we could communicate both within the home and outside.
That's true, and which brings us back to our dear friends John and Marcia and their son Jack, who is a Coda.
And I could see that Jack was really comfortable in both the hearing and the deaf worlds because he was exposed to ASL really from birth, as were their other 3 children. And all of them were taken to the library for storytelling time where they could hear the English words, they could see them on paper, and they could connect them to the ASL that they were learning at home. That was what was missing in your world and mine.
This is true. So they really did have the best of both worlds. They were aware, you know, of deaf culture, American Sign Language, along with written and spoken English.
And that common language is what holds that family together. You know, ASL may not be my first language, but it's what I saw my parents use. It's what I saw them doing. Mm-hmm. And that is really closer to my heart. And now, you know, learning it from you, it's something special that you and I have together.
As a family.
Yes, this is a family.